Hello, and welcome to the Enneagram in a Movie podcast, part of the Awareness to Action podcast network. This is the podcast that looks at one film in each episode and uses it to explain the 9 types and 3 instinctual biases of the Enneagram model of personality. One movie, one type. My name is Mario Sakura, and I'll be joined by Maria Jose Munita and Tamer Zanatti. We are the principals of Awareness to Action International, a global consulting and training company that specializes in practical applications of the Enneagram. You can find out more about us and our work at awareness-to-action.com. In the meantime, make some popcorn, sit back, and enjoy the show. All right, hello everybody. Welcome. We are on to the next episode of the Enneagram in a Movie podcast. We are today talking about the movie Almost Famous and Enneagram Type Two. I'm Mario Sakura, and I'm here with Maria Jose Munita.
Hi there.
And with Tamer Zanatti.
Hello.
So, guys, we're moving on to Type 2. And, watching this movie, I watched it last night. I watched parts of it again this morning. It really helped me understand Enneagram Type 2 in a more nuanced way than I think I ever have, right? Which surprised me because I thought I knew everything, but I've come to realize that, wow, man, you can actually always continue to learn things and see finer distinctions and descriptions. So before we get too much into the movie, I don't know, with you guys, initial reactions to start us off.
I think that for me, the particular characters might not be twos as with the other movies, but the tone of the feeling that I had during the movie was like warm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Warm but not hot.
Yeah.
Right?
It was warm. It was nice. It was just comfortable to watch, whatever it was. Could be drugs. It could be, there wasn't much violence really, but it was just nice to watch and lovely, and, yes. And I think twos have that.
Yes. Tamer, how about you?
Yeah, I can relate to warmth, nice. I can relate to these terms. I would also feel that I felt lots of human connections, like connecting a person to person on multiple levels. I mean, love partners, friends, mother and children. Different. And I have seen also the connections on the other side when it's in turbulence. It's really loud and it's like the opposite of it. So lots of human connections in the movie.
Yes, I agree. And human connection is what Enneagram Type 2 is all about. In fact, we call that Enneagram Type striving to feel connected. So first of all, let's talk about just a real quick overview of the movie Almost Famous, and then we'll get into it a little bit more deeply. But it's about a young guy named William who is 15 years old, but pretends to be older and goes on tour with a band called Stillwater to cover them for an article in Rolling Stone magazine. He falls in love with not a groupie, but a Band-Aid named Penny Lane, and it is all about the adventures of him trying to get a story out of the band, trying to win their trust and confidence, and deal with all the emotional drama that goes along in that sort of environment. Okay, so it was. I think it was a great movie. But anyway, we'll talk more about the movie in a few minutes. Let's talk about the Enneagram Type 2 first. Okay, so we call that, as I said, the striving to feel connected. But there are, I always like to start with the traditional Enneagram here. So pride. Why don't you guys tell us a little bit about pride in Enneagram Type 2?
Yeah, so pride is these self-importance, the passion of twos, that it's like, I'm above you, I know what you need, and I'm doing it for you, but I'm doing what I think you need. And that kind of shows that they feel pride. And the fixation is flattery. And they do this, they praise other people, they compliment. And we see that throughout the movie, that it's something that some of the characters do. But it could be excessive or insincere, especially when it's about furthering my agenda or what my interests So that's the fixation, what I think and what I do.
And let me just jump in here, because one of the things that really struck me watching this movie, again, the definition of flattery is excessive or insincere praise, right? So there's a dishonesty behind it. And it really struck me about how much of this movie is about truth, right? And the impact of truth, on our relationships, right? I mean, what should we expose? What should we not? We always talk about how Enneagram Type 2 really struggles around issues of boundaries. Okay. And so boundaries are not just creating emotional boundaries, but how do we maintain that through the truths or the lies that we tell each other? Okay. That for me was one of the really interesting themes in this movie. Okay. About this deception that is often behind this need to connect.
Yeah. And when you think about the truth, to me, it felt all about Type 4, which is the neglected strategy. So it's the growth path for the two. And we'll talk about the connecting points here, but there is a theme that it's what we avoid, but also what we need, where we need to grow, and that has to do with truth, and it's really what 4 is about.
Tamara, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about relationships and how to keep this connection with the others. And so all of these are serving that. I mean, the pride, the flattery, the humility is serving keeping this connection alive, sometimes in an adaptive way, and it serves that looking after the interest of the others, serving them, and for and being nice and building relationships, and sometimes the complete opposite. So yeah, this is what is Ennea-Type 2 all about.
Yeah. As I was reading about humility last night, I was struck by a definition or something that I probably found in Wikipedia or somewhere, but it says, dictionary definitions accentuate humility as a low self-regard and sense of unworthiness. In a religious context, humility can mean a recognition of self in relation to a deity or deities and subsequent submission to said deity as a member of that religion. Now, this movie was not about religion, unless we consider rock and roll to be a religion, which these characters certainly did, right? So that was fascinating to me as well, to read about humility and see this terms of, of giving in to the music, right? Of being a follower of rock and roll. So I found that to be an interesting piece there. So, now, again, when we talk about the strategies, we always talk about how they start with a feeling need. I want to feel a certain way. I want to feel connected in this case. So I think in ways that help me feel connected, and then I act in ways that help me feel connected. And we always talk about how there are adaptive and maladaptive approaches to applying these strategies, meaning we can do them in healthy ways or unhealthy ways. There's a lot of great things about being connected, right? We can't get through life without connecting, but as with anything else, we can either overdo it or do it in unhealthy ways. Tell us about the preferred strategy, striving to feel connected with the two, and the neglected and support strategies.
So the preferred strategy in this case, striving to feel connected, as you were saying, starts with a feeling need, and that affects how they think, how they see the world, how they filter it. And they are most of the time assessing how connected I am to other people and what can I do to get closer. And that also implies that sometimes some people, I just accept that they're going to be far away and they are kind of out of the group, or some people are in the group. And we will see this in the movie as well. So they do things like helping, or they flatter, or they seduce to connect. The neglected strategy, striving to feel unique, feels like when it's distorted, that unique will disconnect me. If I'm too unique, I'll disconnect from people. And that's almost like the opposite of what I truly want. However, striving to feel unique can help me set some boundaries and also take care about my own needs. Finally, the support strategy, that reinforces my preferred strategy. In this case, striving to feel powerful supports the striving to feel connected. And as Tamara was saying before, you could see that stronger energy in some parts of the movie, it was more 8ish. And you could see how they could be very assertive. And there was this intensity as well that could have to do with the 8.
Tamara, why don't you say something about that 2 connection to 8 and how you saw it in the movie?
Yeah, I mean, in some conversations when really, I mean, connection is lost. I mean, especially with William, and a couple of conversations, and he's like, I mean, this cool guy, the nice guy that, I mean, you're seeing it all. I mean, during, I mean, the 3 hours is being so nice, surrendering to whatever the others are requesting, is really being so assertive, so loud, and so putting himself, I mean, like, I need to do this and draw the lines. And then the next scene, he would go back to being that nice and accepting whatever other would ask him to do. So this dynamics of the 8 and the 2 going too loud, being assertive, and then retreating back and being too nice and boundaryless almost.
One of the main characters in the movie was William's mother, forgetting her name at the moment, but she was a pretty intense and fierce character, right? And if you watch that movie, Elaine, thank you. So, you know, I think when you first meet Elaine, it's easy to think that could be a 1.
Yeah.
But to me, it became pretty clear she's probably a transmitting 2, I thought, right? I mean, just, you know, she was a tough person, but it was all in service of being loved. And at one point, it's actually in the beginning of the movie, when she says to the daughter, "You are rebellious and unworthy of, or unappreciative of my love," is how she put it, I think. Ungrateful, yes, even worse, right? Ungrateful of my love. And that kind of captures this 2 dynamic, this 2 going to 8 of, you have disappointed me, you have not appreciated me, and I'm going to make you pay. Right. And I mean, can you imagine saying a harsher thing to your daughter, right, than what that was? So I think she was a very good example of how 2s can be pretty formidable characters. We'll even see this later with Russell talking to her on the payphone, right? And, you know, we'll come back to that part, but it was pretty cool. One thing comes to my mind is actually, you know, a lot of times the 2 is called the helper. And it's this idea that I'm here to help. And certainly we see that, right? I mean, they called the groupies called themselves Band-Aids, as we're here to help, right? We're here to, you know, help you unleash the music. But in our view, that tendency to help is really an outcome of this desire to be connected, right? What better way to connect to somebody than to help them and to serve them? And this is what we see in the Band-Aids during the movie.
The other thing that I would note is that many times people say that 2s give to get something back. And of course, but they want to get the connection back. They want to be loved. They want to come closer to the other person, not necessarily want something back, like a payback when they give. And in this movie, you can feel that, I think. You can feel how they devote their whole selves, I think, to the band. Yeah, they want to be paid attention to, or they want to have a place, they want to be close, and that's all they want.
Yeah.
And the relationship from both sides is a very kind of a 2 relationships, from the band and from the fans. So the fans are like giving their whole life just to be close to the band, and the band is really in need for friends to feel or to have this thermometer of how much are we achieving here. So even they can feed them with lies in order to keep them fans around. So they feel something, they say something else, and keeping this connection alive. So it's a very 2ish relationship from both sides.
Right. And even at one point, the lead singer of the band, Jeffrey, says, you know, what I do is connect with people, right? Yeah. And I get them off, and I find that person in the audience who's not getting off, and I get them off. And again, you know, for me, it feels very different from the transmitting instinctual bias that we've talked about, right? I mean, to your earlier point, Maria Jose, about the warmth of this, it didn't have that same heat that we see in, say, like a Saturday Night Fever, when we talk about that, right? There was certainly an underlying theme of sex and sexuality during the movie, but it wasn't that same kind of, intensity that we saw in the other movie. And I think, interestingly enough, as I was thinking about it, my guess is that the writer and director, Cameron Crowe, is probably navigating. And it almost seemed to me like some of the transmitting energy was being filtered through a navigating lens in a lot of ways, right? And we see this in movies, particularly when, somebody is writing about one of the instinctual biases that's not theirs. It's just a bit off. Right, I found that interesting.
Yeah, the whole movie is much warmer than a rock star movie. So, I mean,
yes.
Rock star movie would be more, it's like flashing than that. This one is like less flashing and more having warmth in it. Yeah.
I want to go back. I'm sorry about this giving to get idea. I do think that that's one of the unfair labels that gets put on twos, right? First of all, show me somebody who doesn't give to get. Right. And, I'll show you somebody who's not human. Okay. Now, are there altruists out there? Yeah, probably. Okay. But, most of us are involved in some sort of reciprocal relationship with, the people around us. So now, can twos be manipulative and flattering and that sort of thing? Sure. Right. But I think we have to be really careful about assuming that every nice thing a two does is an act of manipulation. All right. So the movie. Almost Famous, starring Kate Hudson. It's not really, other than Frances McDormand, and I don't know if we could call her famous, there are not a lot of really famous people in the movie. The lead guitarist is played by Billy Crudup, who, has had a career, but not a huge career. The lead singer of the band Stillwater was played by Jason Lee, who's, again, been in a number of movies, but not a lot of them. In a weird bit of coincidence, the movie opens with the Christmas song from the Chipmunks, right, which was a novelty song in 1969. And oddly enough, Jason Lee starred in the movie The Chipmunks as the human character in the Chipmunk movie. So it's a weird, small world in that sense, okay? A little bit of trivia for those of you, who care about such things. It was released in 2000. It was written and directed by Cameron Crowe, who made a number of really nice movies in the late 80s into the early 90s. Fast Times at Ridgemont High was directed by Cameron Crowe. That goes back to written by Cameron Crowe, going back to the early 80s. He also did the movie Say Anything with John Cusack, which was if anybody has ever held a boombox over their head while In Your Eyes played, right, or seen that clip anywhere, that's from the movie Say Anything. Again, I'm talking to younger people and people from outside the U.S., so my references are lost on the two of you, but I'm sure some of our listeners get that. He also wrote and directed the movie Singles, Jerry Maguire, which we are going to come back to next time. Then he did Almost Famous, and then he made a few movies that really didn't go anywhere, right? So didn't really pick up. Let's see, who else was in this? So Frances McDormand played William's mother, Zooey Deschanel, who went on to have somewhat of a career, but it's a lot of people who were kind of almost famous, right? You would see them and you'd say, yeah, I know that person, but I'm not quite sure where, right? So I felt the title fit. Oddly enough, the guitar player, Russell, was originally supposed to be played by Brad Pitt. That's why one of the key lines was, your looks are becoming a problem for the band, right? And because it was meant to be said to Brad Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
But interesting. I thought they were a bad problem, because he didn't dress kind of nicely or anything like that. Yeah. Now that you say this, it's kind of completely changes my interpretation of it.
Yes, what he was trying to say was he was too pretty and it was becoming a distraction. Okay, let's see what else. It kind of made a star of Kate Hudson for a while there. She was big in the early 2000s. Both Kate Hudson and Frances McDormand were nominated for Best Supporting Actress for that movie, which was interesting. I thought they were both excellent. Again, it really helped to cement Cameron Crowe's reputation. It was not a successful movie financially. I was kind of surprised by this because it has a really good reputation as a movie, but it only made $47.4 million worldwide on a budget of $60 million, which means it was a big loss for whoever made it.
Did you know
Tell me
that
about-
it's supposed to be Cameron Crowe's kind of real life story?
Absolutely right. Go ahead, say more on that.
Yeah, that he was a reporter, I think, for Rolling Stone magazine, and at a very early age. Yeah,
as a teenager. Yeah, and so the band Stillwater was actually a composite of a number of bands. The band Poco, Led Zeppelin, the Eagles, the Allman Brothers, and Leonard Skinner, which is a big set of bands for somebody to be following around as a teenager. I mean, particularly Led Zeppelin was notorious for their debauchery on tours and, experiences with groupies and so forth. Okay, there's my big word for the day, Maria Jose. All right. So, so again, it's about an underage reporter going on tour, trying to get a story about this band that he can turn into Rolling Stone magazine. For me, the movie, it has a lot going on, right? It's about the power of love. It's about the power of connection, and certainly about the power of music. And for me, it really made a good point about how music brings people together. Right. And we see a number of situations where that's the case, right? There's a great ability of music to connect people. Did you guys like the movie?
I did.
Yeah, I liked it. It's my first time to watch it, but I liked it.
Kind of movie they don't make much anymore, right? Not a lot of, superheroes, and it wasn't a Netflix series, so it for me it was a nice character study. Got good reviews when it came out. Let's see, Rotten Tomatoes gives it an 89 rating and a 92 audience score. Go ahead, Maria.
Yeah, so I think that it feels to me like it's something that Cameron Crowe just wanted to do.
Yes.
It's like, I like these things. It's my story. I just want to get it, make it a movie. It's not thinking about what's going to sell. It's what I want, want to do.
Yes.
I'm surprised that the movie did not make money, but it's obvious that, for me now when I'm looking at it, it's obvious that it does not have the ingredients of the commercially successful movie. It's a nice movie, but does not really have this commercial ingredients. Maybe this is why.
Also, for anybody that's a fan of rock and roll, particularly rock from the late 60s and early 70s, which I am, you will not find a better soundtrack in any movie as far as I'm concerned. The number of songs from major musicians, Led Zeppelin, for example, there were 4 Led Zeppelin songs in the movie. There was Neil Young, there was Yes, there was Jethro Tull, all these bands that they would not have been able to afford had Cameron Crowe not had good relationships with the musicians in the music community, right? And so, for example, he went to Led Zeppelin and said, hey, how about giving me the rights to these songs? And it was the first time they ever let any of their songs be in a movie. They did put their foot down with Stairway to Heaven, however. They decided to save that one and wouldn't give them Stairway to Heaven. But for me, and not just the quality of the songs, but the use of the songs and the placement of the songs was really incredible. There's a couple of sequences we'll talk about as we go, but each song was well placed to deliver a message through the film.
Awareness to Action offers a unique approach to applying the Enneagram professionally with leaders and organizations, as well as for personal development. What makes us stand apart is our Enneagram expertise and focus on understanding human nature.
We know people because we see people. And this is a skill set that can be taught and learned. Human nature is complex and simple at the same time. Our mission is to help people see clearly and act accordingly. Why? Because the ability to see ourselves and others clearly and honestly is essential. It enables us to act in more adaptive and useful ways.
The multicultural team in Awareness to Action will help you learn tools and practices to become more aware and also to understand and engage people more effectively. Learn more at awareness-to-action.com. Join us at 2021 for exciting learning opportunities.
So I think this the first scene I want to talk about is the beginning of the movie that establishes the kind of the mother-daughter-son dynamic, and also this issue of truth. The mother, played again by Frances McDormand, is very smothering, right? I mean, she won't let them listen to rock and roll. She won't let them eat sugar. She won't let them do this, do that. Won't let them celebrate Christmas on Christmas, but instead September to make sure it's not commercialized. Okay, and the daughter even says something about this as a house of horrors or something when she's describing the family circumstances. The other thing that comes out is that they had been lying to William about how old he was.
Yeah, so that was really interesting to me. And as you said before, it looks like a one first because of all these rules, but throughout the movie, both kids said, she does it out of love, and it doesn't mean that the one doesn't love the kids, but it's about, I think that I know what you need, and even if that means that you need to believe that you're 2 years older, that's okay, because that's good for you. Maybe that's too much, at least for me. The guy was in shock when he realized that poor boy, that he was 2 years younger than he was pretending to be, and the impact on the other kids who were making fun of him because of that.
Yes.
He looked like a baby.
Yeah, and what supports what you're saying, Maria Jose, that when you look at the rules, they are not strictly applied all the time. So, I mean, with William, sometimes it's softly. I mean, yes, don't get drugged, but it's a completely different way than saying it to the daughter. So it looks like it's really out of protection of love, out of the pride of, I know your needs, I know what is good for you, and I will do it. I will not ask you about it. So it's really this relationship of me loving you, me protecting you, maybe taking care of you.
Yeah, so the line that the daughter says is, "This is a house of lies," right? And, again, which gets this idea of the connection between truth, lying, and connecting to people, right? How do we maintain relationships? I mean, both of you, like me, have been married for a number of years, and we all know that, you kind of, you tell the truth, but you don't tell everything all the time. And there's some things you don't tell the truth about because that, this is going to, cause a bit more of a problem. So, we all live these lives of little white lies in order to maintain our connections, right? Because as we see later, when they all start really sharing their true feelings on the airplane, it really doesn't go well when everybody decides to be completely honest, right? So that to me was fascinating.
Yeah, and for the sake of my wife listening to this podcast, I'm saying I don't tell lies. So.
Me neither.
And neither. It's purely hypothetical situation, and certainly we are all excluded from that that theory.
And there's something else in that part of the movie about the lack of boundaries. It's when Anita escapes her house. I mean, it's not like she's leaving; she's escaping. And it's like kind of, what? It's no boundaries, and I need to get out of here.
Yes.
And I think it's because she's too protective, the mother, and gets too much into what she should eat, listen to, do, whatever. And that's a lack of boundaries.
Yes.
She's 18. She's not a kid. She's 18.
Right. And it's funny when she does leave, right? And the mother says, well, you're making a mistake, but I can't stop you because you're 18. And after she gives the hug, she literally runs to the boyfriend's car, right? And the boyfriend's car literally squeals down the street. And the mother says, oh, she'll be back. And the girl leans out the window and says, woohoo! Right? It's, kind of an homage to The Simpsons, right? There's a lot of parts of The Simpsons where that's how Homer will make his exit, run real fast and screech down the road and so forth. So it was, I cannot get out of here fast enough. And what that kind of points to is how the two can, in their efforts to connect to people, to do what's best for them can drive them away, right?
Yeah.
And this is one of the fundamental pains that twos tend to suffer.
And the theme of boundary is all over the movie. I mean, it's like almost in every scene is like you can see things through whether a lack of setting boundaries or too much intrusion into boundaries of others, or people are being suffocated because of their boundaries are being violated. So I mean, the movie is screaming boundaries and just highlighting this as a important topic when it comes to twos.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And that idea of boundaries gets even further established when William kind of stalks and meets with the rock critic Lester Bangs. Now, Lester Bangs was a real person, right? And he was kind of this revolutionary rock and roll critic from back in that period. Died early, of course, as if you couldn't see that coming, right? And played by our old friend from The Big Lebowski, Philip Seymour Hoffman. Now, I would watch Philip Seymour Hoffman read the phone book and take out the trash. I find him to be such a compelling character or a compelling actor. Very different character from what we saw in The Big Lebowski. Give me your thoughts on him as Lester Bangs.
Yeah. I see him like, what do you call it? A hippie kind of. It's like I do whatever I want to do. I say whatever I want to say. Rebellious somehow, and actually artistic in the way he articulates things. I mean, sometimes using profanity, but I mean, it's like his views to things is looking through artistic glasses. I mean, the way he sees lies, the way he expresses his opinions.
Yeah, there's a kind sort of fourish energy to me that it talks about being real, saying the truth, being sincere, but it's sincere even if it will be painful, and also like, for me, I'm lonely and I'm different. Kind of outside. I'm not part of the group and almost misunderstood, but I like it. And this kind of dilemma of like, I'm better, but I'm worst for me, but I'm above you. So it's these four inner experience. I think it's shown here.
I kind of saw him as a transmitting five. Again, hard to say, right? He wasn't a fully developed character. But for me, so just a couple of things about Lester Bangs, right? So he did sort of coin, one of the stories is he coined the term punk rock, right? So, and if you think of the bands that he was advocating for, like Iggy Pop, for example, was down on the Doors, but, up on Iggy Pop and other things like that. He liked raw, kind of hard music. And so he was also, however, to Tamara's earlier point, extremely well-educated, well-read, right? He was probably self-taught in most things, but there was a lot of references to philosophy and history and pop culture and all these things in his music criticism that come through. It's really great writing. If you ever get the chance to read any of it, I recommend it. Okay, Lester Bangs, Bangs. So, and one of the things he talks with William about is this idea of setting boundaries, right? Don't let them buy you drinks. Don't let them suck you in. Don't let them make you, they're going to want you to write pieces about how wonderful they are and how great everything is. And, but you got to, what is it he says to him? You've got to be honest and unmerciful.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's kind of that objectivity of the five.
Yes.
And he shows that in when he talks about the end of rock and roll. And able to not get too attached to something he likes and see that it's coming to an end. Yeah.
Okay, good. So Tamara needs to leave us here. So Tamara, thanks for being with us so far. And sorry you couldn't stick around, but we'll see you next time for the next episode.
Thank you. See you next episode.
So we'll continue on here. The Lester Bangs conversation again sets up this idea of emotional distance and boundaries from the people in the band, and this whole idea of analysis from a distance. I think that comes through. But what also starts to happen here, I think, and again, a theme that we see going through, is this idea of connection to other. right? Identification through other. And particularly when we start to see the first, so Lester Bangs gives William a job, an assignment, right? I'll pay you $35, give me 1,000 words on Black Sabbath. So he goes down to the concert hall that night. He can't get in. Right, the guard kicks him away, tells him to go up to the top of the ramp, and this is where he runs into the Band-Aids the first time. Okay,
which is really interesting that it's Band-Aids, because it's just an aid to the band, but they call themselves that. But when they're explaining what that means to them, at some point, I think it's Penny Lane who says, "We inspire music."
Mm-hmm.
It's so. What would they do without us? We are the ones who make it happen. And so we're kind of helping, supporting, but then we're the muse.
Exactly.
Sort of how the two sometimes feel, that it's the power behind the scenes.
Yes. Exactly right. And that's certainly how they saw themselves, right? And, one could debate, how much of that role they actually filled, right? I mean, was that really what they were, doing, or were they more of a convenience? But, again, they certainly filled a hole emotionally in the story, right? And again, brings through this theme. So Penny Lane, who, again, played by Kate Hudson, she's the kind of the queen of the Band-Aids, played by Kate Hudson. Again, I'm going to do some serious name dropping right here, right? So about 20 years ago, I actually stood within about 5 feet of Kate Hudson at a talk by the Dalai Lama. Okay, now go ahead. I dare anybody to beat that name drop right there, right? So, so it was at a talk for the Dalai Lama, and of course, back at that time, this was 1998 or so. He was real popular with the Hollywood set, and so I could see Richard Gere over there, and Kate Hudson was there with her mother, Goldie Hawn. Okay, and now here's the funny thing: during the break in the talk, Goldie Hawn and Kate Hudson brought their own masseuse to a lecture by the Dalai Lama. And during the lunch hour, they were kind of in this kind of closed off area getting a massage during the break. So I will say Kate Hudson, one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life. I mean, just, back then she was, stunningly attractive.
It's funny that what you just did is kind of two-ish, isn't it?
It sure is. I'm sticking with the theme of the podcast here.
Name dropping, show how connected you are. It's very two-ish.
Yes. And this captures kind of what's happening at the heart of the two, I think, is that who I am and what my value is depends on who I'm connected to.
Yeah.
Okay? And why a lack of connection can feel so desperate to a two is because if they're not connected to anybody, they don't know who they are. They feel this existential dread.
It's funny how the picture of the movie, at least one of them, is Kate Hudson, Penny Lane with sunglasses, and in the sunglasses you can see the band. So it's kind of it reflects what you're just saying. She is because she's connected to the band.
Yes. If the eyes are the seat, the kind of the window into the soul, then the band is her soul, right? And, vice versa. So it's very much about identity.
He makes his way into the concert by flattering people and name dropping as well.
Yes.
So he makes all the Stillwater band members feel special by saying their names and how good they are, and the songs that he likes and why, and things to show that he knows who they are and that he appreciates them and makes them feel great. And that it's a way that in which twos get what they want.
Did you feel that it was not genuine in any way when he was saying those things to him?
No. He just chose what to say really well.
Yeah.
But of course, he was smart, but I think I felt it genuine.
Yeah, I completely agree, right? I completely agree. And again, that just shows that for the two, it's not necessarily artifice when they're flattering people, right? It really does come from I know you, right? I understand you. I get it, that we can overlook sometimes. after the concert, you could see him on cloud nine, right? I mean, he's saying goodbye to everybody and calling everybody by name. I'm talking about William here, right? And he just, he found his tribe. And it was this, I've connected to these people that I idolize. And here's where we really start to see this theme coming in of adoration of the special other. And, particularly we see this in the navigating too, is this, my value is in the quality of the people, the quality of the group I'm connected with. Okay. Yeah. So go ahead.
And there's also the scene where he thinks he's introducing Penny Lane to Russell.
Yes.
Then we realize that they know each other already, but that greeting or that connection they made, you understand why it is how it is, but it is very intense.
Yes.
And again, it's all about connection. So without saying much, they said everything to each other.
Yes. Yes. And I would say, too, that's a pretty good example of a purely transmitting moment, right? This, intense, sexual, intense connection between people. Are you interested in learning more about our approach to the Enneagram? Go to awareness-to-action.com and check out our certification program. We offer a clear, concise, business-friendly, and science-minded approach while maintaining the depth of traditional approaches to the system. At Awareness to Action International, we're the leading innovators in the theory and pragmatic applications of this system to all aspects of the work environment, including leadership and personal development, team building, diversity and culture, and managing change. However, this approach is not just for the business world. A lot of people who attend our trainings do so for their own self-development or spiritual growth. Our certification program is one of only a handful of curricula accredited as a school by the International Enneagram Association. It is currently being conducted virtually and combines live sessions with asynchronous learning. Again, find out more at awareness-to-action.com. Okay, so William finds himself on tour with the band, right? He gets an assignment. He gets a call from Rolling Stone magazine, which was huge at the time, right? It's still a magazine that's going, but Rolling Stone in the late 60s, early 70s, I mean, that was it. There was even a song that they sing later about being on the cover of Rolling Stone, right? And Rolling Stone was named after a Bob Dylan song, Like a Rolling Stone. The founder and editor of Rolling Stone, Jan Wenner, actually makes a real quick cameo in the movie when William is looking into all the taxis and he sees a guy sitting there reading the paper. That's the founder of Rolling Stone. Again, name dropping here, so for what it's worth. So,
good education for me.
William goes on tour. They go to a couple places first, and then so there's a few things that happen. I want to get to the part where they end up in Topeka.
But before that, I think that he observes, but then starts building relationships and trust very easily. It was just hard for people not to like him. So he should have been almost avoided or treated with more suspicion by the band because he was going to write an article about them. But although they tried, they just couldn't help liking him because he was, nice, adorable, trustworthy.
Yes. I think, William struck me as more of a 9-ish character than a 2-ish character, right? I mean, the movie is about the theme of the 2, but I think his character was probably a navigating 9, right? And so, and I think I want to come back towards the end of the podcast and talk about this distinction between the connection of the 2, the merging of the 9, and the intense connection of the transmitting instinctual bias, right? So yes, absolutely. So, and again, we get into this idea of truth and honesty and boundaries because they refer to him as the enemy, right? Because he's a journalist, but they also take him in as a friend. So it kind of, again, it's this, all right, where are we? There's also an issue of truth when he's talking about Penny Lane. They kind of first meet and there's this connection between them. And she said, okay, let's be honest with you. How old are we really? Right. And they start out at 18 and then she ends up she's actually 16 and he's actually 15. And again, it sets up this idea of what's true and what's not. And how does this shape our relationships. Okay?
There's also something that she says at some point in the bus. I'm not sure if it's in that first or in that part of the conversation, where she says, Russell is my last project. I do these for very few people.
Yes.
And it's like, I'm making him a star, and I am the one behind it. And
yes.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting.
Yes, very much the pride thing. Again, and just to be clear, Russell was the guitar player for the band Stillwater, and they were having this intense affair. Now, of course, Russell was married, and that comes back to be an issue a bit later in the movie. So they stop in a couple of towns, and in one of them, Topeka, Kansas, which is right in the middle of the country, kind of, well, I've never been there, so I'm sure it's a very nice place, but, it's not the most popular destination in the world. And so the band has a big fight because they get T-shirts made, and everybody in the band is out of focus except for Russell. The good-looking guy, right? This causes a big fight among the band members. So he decides that he only wants to interact with authentic people, and so him and William go out for a walk, and these young guys come by and say, "Hey, you want to go to a party?" They end up at this party, and he's all thrilled to be at a party with real people, and he's connecting to them, and you could tell he's really in his element here.
It was pretty sad, I think, because he was in his element. Whatever he would say, I mean, they would adore him anyway, because he was a star, but he was just talking nonsense all the time. Yes. But it was real. Now he gets on drugs and almost killed himself jumping into a pool from the roof. But and at some point he says something like, "I'm a golden god." A golden god. Yes. And then he denies that. He said, "Did I really say that?" So I think it was funny, but a bit disturbing or sad to me to see that he's in his element, yes, but not really something that would be sustainable. He wanted to stay and live there almost.
Yes, yeah. Well, particularly while he was drunk, and then when he took the LSD, right? And and again, what does LSD do? But it breaks down all your boundaries about things, and opens you up. And so now, of course, when he sobered up, and they are in the aftermath of that fight over the T-shirts, they show them leaving on the bus. Okay, and none of them are talking to each other. They all look miserable. And then what happens, Maria-Jose?
And then there's the song, and one of them starts singing, and the other one follows, and all of a sudden they're all singing, and it's all warmth again.
Yes.
Everybody's smiling, and you can feel, it's just like a cliche, but you can feel the love. You can feel that they care for each other, and that they're happy to be together. And it's like a nice feeling.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. And first of all, it was not just a song. It was Tiny Dancer by Elton John. And there's no way anybody can listen to Tiny Dancer without singing along unless you're a robot, in my view. And, it starts with, the drummer just kind of tapping his drumsticks in the back. And then another guy starts nodding his head. And then one guy sings out one line. And before you know it, it's like karaoke night on the bus, right? Now, of course, William, let's not forget, is a high school student. Right. And he was told he could go away for a couple of weeks, and we don't know how long it's been, but it's been more than this. And he turns to Penny in the midst of this, and he says, "I need to go home." And you remember what she says to him?
"You are home." You are home.
Yes. Again, speaks to this idea of the power of connection, and that our home is in who we're connected to, right? Yeah. Rather than a place. Okay. It's the people that kind of make up the sum of us. So they kind of pull themselves together. They move on. They kind of all make up. They go on to the next town. And the next scene I wanted to talk about, I've titled here, "Let's Deflower the Kid." Right. So this was, again, an interesting scene where, again, the boundaries are breaking down, right? So William is in the bathtub in the hotel room trying to write his article because all the Band-Aids are in the other room and they're having a pillow fight or something. And Penny Lane comes into the bathroom and sits down on the toilet and starts going to the bathroom, right? And, so again.
And he mentions how he had pictured kind of getting to know each other better than seeing each other at home, kind of in the real world. And then maybe after having a relationship, they could see each other in the bathroom, but not so soon.
Right. And so then, he leaves and he goes out into the other room, and the other band-aids say, okay, let's deflower the kid, meaning that they're going to have sex with him and take his virginity away. And there's this really fascinating dynamic between him and Penny while these other three girls are seducing him and disrobing him and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like he's watching her. She's almost at the door, and the other girls are inviting her to join them. And Penny Lane stays at the door, looks at William, and he's like, come here, please. I mean, you're the only one I want. And she's kind of seducing him, but also saying, this is how I read it, like, I'm not going to do this to you. I'm going to leave you. Enjoy this. I'm leaving. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's some nice camera work on this where they kind of do these increasing close-ups to where they just are looking at the eyes of the two of them, and even at one point she kind of puts her fingers over her eyes, her hand over her eyes, and then spreads her fingers so she's looking at one eye, kind of playing around with him. So it is this odd moment of kind of sexual and kind of sisterly and kind of motherly almost. It's like she is taking care of him in a way, but also protecting him from her. Right? Yeah. I felt, right? So an interesting scene. And again, and this brings me to this distinction between these energies that we talk about, right? This, the transmitting energy, which is, very sexual in nature, right? It's about reproduction. It's about, doing the things that increase the chances of reproduction.
And I think that energy we can see throughout the movie in the relationship between Penny Lane and William. And Russell.
And Russell. Right.
I think that's the most intense thing we get to see in the movie. That part.
Yes.
And William's mother, but it's not sexual. Yes. It's still intense, but not sexual.
Yeah, and that's another example of transmitting that's kind of non-sexual. It is, I am transmitting these ideas to you, right? And she even says at one point, I'm a university professor. How come I can't teach my own kids, right? Yeah. And and for her, it's all about sharing her wisdom. Which is another element of the transmitting domain. Okay?
And in terms of Russell as well, when William at the beginning of the movie says your guitar is incendiary or something like that, those are kind of words that speak of transmitting because of how intense it is.
But the relationship between Penny and William is different. Clearly, he's in love with her, infatuated with her, but there's also this protective element to it, and it's a bit different. And her relationship to him is more about that two connection, right? Of protection, looking out for, I know what you need, I know what's best for you, let me, give that to you. And his, with him, as kind of the navigating nine, there's just this idea of getting lost in the others, right? We talk about how the navigating nine in particular can lose their sense of identity to the group. And this is a great example of it, right? I mean, he has no ability to set boundaries on what he wants and what he needs, and just kind of goes along with all these much stronger personalities.
Yeah.
Another thing we see in that related to the type 2 is when he's calling home from the payphone to talk to his mother, and Russell grabs the phone out of William's hand. And at first he's kind of cocky and smug, and she's going to be so impressed with me, and that her son is talking to this rock star, and she's having none of it.
Yeah, and she tells him what to do and how to do it, and to kind of find a better way to kind of get on with life. And he says, "Yes, mom. Yes, mom." It's like
exactly right. You can see him kind of standing up straight and this shock on his face, and afterwards he says, "Your mom kind of freaked me out, man." And that's when William pats him on the shoulder and says, "Well, she means well." Okay?
Yeah.
Are you interested in learning more about our approach to the Enneagram? Go to awareness2action.com and check out our certification program. We offer a clear, concise, business-friendly, and science-minded approach while maintaining the depth of traditional approaches to the system. At Awareness to Action International, we're the leading innovators in the theory and pragmatic applications of this system to all aspects of the work environment, including leadership and personal development, team building, diversity and culture, and managing change. However, this approach is not just for the business world. A lot of people who attend our trainings do so for their own self-development or spiritual growth. Our certification program is one of only a handful of curricula accredited as a school by the International Enneagram Association. It is currently being conducted virtually and combines live sessions with asynchronous learning. Again, find out more at awareness-to-action.com. So we find out that Russell's wife is going to be joining the band in New York, meaning that they have to get rid of Penny Lane because Russell doesn't want his wife encountering Penny, as one might imagine. So there's this kind of heartbreaking scene where she is actually kind of sold to another band. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the band now, but for $50 and a case of Heineken beer. And there's just such a coldness to that scene, right? And an interesting, so there's a really interesting musical lead up to that, right? Because they first show Penny dancing, if you remember, and there's this lovely Cat Stevens song called The Wind playing while she's dancing, right? And then they do this quick cut to them strutting to the airplane, right? They're now going to start flying by private jet while they play Jimi Hendrix, Voodoo Child, Slight Return is the name of the song, right? This kick and guitar solo that, there's nothing more badass than that piece of music. And then they cut to this scene, and it's Clarence Carter singing Steal Away, which is a song about infidelity, right? And they're trying to clean up the mess of his infidelity by selling Penny Lane, right? So again, I was just marveling listening to the music, the use of music in this song. So I had to share that.
And I agree that it was cold, but they were pretending to be cool about it. And when William, it's almost shocked that this is happening, Russell stands up and explains to him that they have to do it because his wife is coming. And right. So he cares about it. That's what I felt, that he cares about it. But it's just, this is a pretend to be selling it, but we need to get rid of her. Yeah.
Now, of course, she doesn't go, and she ends up going to New York as well. And they're all
but before that, William tells her not to go to New York, and he ends up, because she insists in going. He tells her what happened, that they sold her for a can of beer, and she's just so shocked and sad to hear it. And it's funny that she asks, "What kind of beer?" but it's like, how much? To me, it was, how much am I worth? Kind of, right. What's my price? So I was sold, but by how much? It's like when they offered me camels for you in Egypt. They weren't enough. But it's.
That's a whole long story we don't need to go into now, but okay.
Yeah. So it's like, what kind of beer, which is so sweet, sad, and deep. Yeah.
Yes. So she ends up, they're at a restaurant called Max's Kansas City, a famous New York restaurant from the era. She shows up, and it causes this huge problem because Russell's sitting there with his wife, and the wife asks, who is she with? And all the band members say, she's with me, right? So they know, oh boy, now they got a problem. The manager goes over, kind of chases her away, and she attempts to commit suicide.
And then William follows her and finds her in the hotel room and rescues her, asks for help, and they stop her from dying.
Yeah, so she overdosed on Quaaludes, and he calls the doctor, and they come up. And again, another really interesting use of music, because while they're pumping her stomach in the bathroom, Stevie wonders, my Cherie Amour, right? My love starts playing, and he's looking at her with his, and the lyrics playing are lovely as a sunny day, distant as the Milky Way, right? And she's throwing up in the, and he's got these loving eyes, and and she's throwing up in the bathtub. So it's again this, what love can do to us when we look at people. After this, they end up in the airplane, and the band is in the airplane. It's a small plane, and they had decided to start using a plane rather than the bus so they could do more tours. It was actually Steve Miller, the musician, head of the Steve Miller Band, that first came up with this idea of using airplanes to get from town to town because you could do more tours and make more money. And so they kind of throw that into the movie. They run into an electrical storm. And again, there's a bit of a homage here to two events. One of the guys starts singing the song Peggy Sue, which was a Buddy Holly song. And of course, Buddy Holly died in a plane crash. And it was also an homage to Leonard Skinner, the band of, with whom quite a few members died in a plane crash, and was one of the bands that Cameron Crowe followed. So while they're on the airplane, they think they're all going to die. So they start telling the truth to each other.
They're just making confessions about how much they dislike each other. And what's his name? Jeff tells Russell that nobody really likes him. And right after Russell has said that he loves them all. And
yes. It starts off with, I love you all, right? Yes. And then it goes downhill from there. Because the next revelation is the band manager saying, I ran over a guy one time. His face still haunts me. I didn't stop to see if he was okay, right? And and then the other manager says, I love you all, but I stole some money from you, and it's only because I deserved it. And
did you see that the first manager was Jimmy Fallon?
No, I did. Did I say it? Was it really?
No. Did you see? Yeah, he was.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that. Okay. Oh, interesting. Yeah, so they start confessing all these things, including, I slept with your wife, we slept with your girlfriend, all this sort of thing.
I'm still in love with your wife.
I'm still in love with your wife. I hate you. I hope you die, kind of thing. And when the plane ends up being okay, again, they cut to them all leaving, walking through the airport. Again, I hate to be a real music geek here, but the song playing is Neil Young's Cortez the Killer, this haunting, incredible guitar solo from that song as they're walking through the hallway, and William and the band separate at that point.
Yeah, and Russell tells him, write whatever you want, because up to that point, they have been telling him, write about us and make us famous, do this, do that, don't write this, write that. And now Russell says, write whatever you want.
But when he does write whatever he wants, they deny saying it. Okay, so there's this betrayal of William by the band members. And again, we get back to this issue of truth and connection, right? Who are you in this relationship? How much can I trust you? How much appreciation do you have for what we've done with you? Right? From the band's perspective, we've shown you a good time, right? We've opened your eyes. We've traveled, taken you all over the place. You kind of owe us to be nice.
Yeah, they even said, it's not like they implied that. They said it to him. And they said, we did everything but get you laid. And he looks with his funny face like, don't worry about that.
Right. William runs into his sister, who's now a flight attendant in the airport. And she says, hey, let's go somewhere. I'll take you anywhere you want to go.
Yeah, he looks miserable, by the way.
Yes, he's ready to go home. That's for sure. Right. You can tell he's physically and emotionally spent. So where he wants her to go with him is home to see their mother. And so they go and they have this little bit of an awkward reunion on the front porch when they get there, right? Yeah. The mother is seeing both of them and
hugs Anita, the daughter.
Eventually, right? They kind of stand there and look at each other, and then they do hug, and it's this really awkward hug.
Yeah,
right?
And it's funny because she says to her daughter, I forgive you. And Anita says, I didn't apologize.
Yes. All right. So, again, we have issues with boundaries here, right?
Yeah, because you did it to me, so you left and you did something to me when
Right.
I did so much for you. So it's kind of expecting something in return that she didn't get. And then she could forgive her, but I don't think Anita had anything to apologize about.
Right. That was going to continue to be a strained relationship, right? I mean, they did seem to have some healing there, but I think that, that's going to be a complicated relationship. He submits the article to Rolling Stone. They love it, but then the band denies all of the quotes, right? When they do fact checking, the band said, no, none of that stuff happened. He made it all up. So the story gets pulled. Of course, he's quite depressed about that, and everybody hears in the Band-Aid community about what Russell and the rest of the band did to William regarding his article. And so he starts to feel guilt. One of the other bandmates said, you should call Penny. Russell calls Penny and says, I'd like to meet. What's your address? Now, of course, something we didn't mention earlier, but Penny and William actually live in the same town of San Diego. And so she gives him William's address. So he shows up at their house, meeting the mother, expecting to find Penny.
What a surprise.
Yes. And, and so he says, is she here? And thinks he's talking about the sister. And the sister is saying, oh boy, I hope he's here for me. And of course he's not. And so before he goes in to kind of make amends with William, the mother says to him, I thought we connected when we spoke on the phone, right? Which was just a great line. And again, it's that two thing, right? It's about connection. Yeah. So Russell calls Rolling Stone, admits that William's article was legitimate, and they end the movie as William is asking Russell more questions about rock and roll in his bedroom. What about subtypes, Maria Jose? What subtypes did we see in the movie?
So we saw Penny. That's an easy one.
Transmitting two.
Now, different to the mother, to Elaine, that it's transmitting two as well. This was Penny's was a sweeter and more sexual version of the transmitting two, whereas Elaine was a bit more intense in terms of rigid or severe a bit.
Yeah. And as something we always say about these instinctual biases is we don't always manifest all of the qualities or, all of the behaviors in the domain equally. Right. Yeah. And that's an example of, Penny, and, maybe it's because of her age and, whatever else, but is certainly, the more seductive and sexual, displaying those characteristics, whereas the mother is more about legacy and passing on information and controlling and pride.
Yeah. Do you know what we haven't talked about?
What's that?
Or maybe we have, but not so explicitly. The intensity in the kind of how they look at people. She has these transmitting two thing that they look at you like wanting to get inside of you. It's really, really intensely. And Penny has all that look throughout the movie. And I see that especially in transmitting twos. They just don't stop looking at you.
Yes, absolutely right. And it's almost, this is a very negative image, but it makes me think of the alien from Aliens. It kind of gets stuck on somebody's face and sticks. I mean, I don't mean to be unkind to twos, right? Because obviously they're not all like that. But you're absolutely right. There's this connection, this need for connection, and this attempts to connect through the eyes. That we see in twos very often. Again, I would probably think of Lester Bangs as a transmitting five. A lot of four stuff going on. We don't use the wing theory, but in my experience, the transmitting five usually identifies as a kind of a five with a four wing. There is that creativity, that intensity there that, adds a different flavor. William, again, I would say is probably a navigating nine. Sister felt a little bit sevenish to me, maybe, but not really a fully formed character. How about Russell?
Russell,
what would you say he?
Yeah, to me, he was like a transmitting four. Mm-hmm. Now, well, he was a character, so you never know. But The only thing that was a bit off for me was that he was just sweet and naive at times,
Yeah.
But then misunderstood that I'm above, but I'm this and I'm different. There was something about being different, but feeling the loyalty towards a band. So what do you think?
Yeah, it could have been a 4, could have been a transmitting 9. Right. There was a bit of that going on. Again, a little hard. He was kind of a stock character in a lot of ways. A decent actor, but not a great actor. So I think he was a little bit hard to tell. And, most of the other characters I don't think were really fleshed out well enough to have clear Enneagram types. But great character study. And for me, kind of as a final thought, again, I've talked a lot about the music in this movie. And, there were just these moments that in addition to saying the right thing, you would hear lyrics in the background speaking to what was happening, right? A number of times. But also there was this, the music was used to speak the unspeakable, right? And this is what the arts do, right? They put into feeling that which can't be put into words, right? So again, Cortez the killer, when they're walking in the airport down the hall after the almost plane crash, when he first listens to the Who's Tommy after the sister leaves, right? She tells him, light a candle and listen to this and it'll change your life. I've never listened to Tommy while watching a candle, but I have listened to Tommy under other, we'll say, distorted circumstances, and it was, it's one of those pieces of music that will, really blow your mind. And there's so much about this need for connection that's hard to put into words. Yeah. And I think the music sort of served that purpose of helping to put into some form those things which we can't talk about. Final thoughts?
I would watch it again. In a few years.
Tanner made reference to it being 3 hours long. It's not 3 hours long. It is a long movie. I think
it's 2 hours.
Yeah, I think it's about 2 hours 15 or so. But I agree. It's a good movie. I've seen it a few times.
I think it paints a fairer picture of the two than people have in their minds, and I like that.
I have to agree, and I'll go a little bit further on that because I have always wrestled with identifying male twos, right? Whenever I assess somebody's Enneagram type, it just seems like something that's just so darn foreign to me. Being an 8 and having my own biases, I just can't imagine why anybody would be a 2, right? They're perfectly lovely people. I get it, but it's just foreign to me and to my experience. This movie did help me really appreciate that energy and what it brings a lot more than I had before. So I encourage people to watch the movie, pay attention to the soundtrack, and learn more about the Type 2. So next up, another Cameron Crowe movie, Jerry Maguire, written and directed, starring Tom Cruise. Another great soundtrack, by the way, but I won't go into as much detail about it. So thanks for being with us, everybody. Maria Jose, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Enneagram in a Movie podcast, part of the Awareness to Action podcast network. Find out more about the Enneagram and our offerings at awareness-to-action.com. And if you enjoyed the episode, please go online and give us a review. We'll see you next time.